So I'll call the December 10th Airport Advisory Board meeting to order. It is very nice to see everybody, even if it's over Zoom and not back in person. Michelle, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Absolutely. Steve Bliss.
Here.
Harrison Earl.
Here.
Kent Jacobson.
Here.
Melinda Jordan.
Here.
Russell Robeson.
Here.
Mick White. Orion Wiseman. Councilmember Peck.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you. Whoever has the grandfather clock, I love it. First item on the agenda is our public invited to be heard, which we'll open up. Each person who's wishing to speak, be unmuted one at a time. Please state name and address for the record, 3 minutes for comments, and remember to be respectful, address the comments to the board and not to any individual.
Chair, we don't actually have any public with us in this setting tonight. He didn't join.
Okay, well, we'll move on and they'll be the second invited if they do join. So the first agenda item then is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments on that or entertain a motion to approve if not?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the February 13th regular meeting, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, so then we'll move along to a financial update. Mr. Slater, please.
Okay, Chairman. So the year-to-date revenue total received at the end of November is $442,719.11. Expended is $296,311.81 with $820 encumbered. I believe that encumbrance is towards a contract that we just haven't finalized and closed out yet. That leaves us a difference of $145,587.30 to the good. With that, I will say that COVID hit pretty hard on fuel flowage and, of course, tax refund as well. The only other thing of note is the city has recently entered into some new contracts with other cell phone towers. And I'm not sure if maybe a couple of our checks might have got deposited into the wrong place. So under the cell phone tower, why it looks low, I am checking into that with accounting and finance. And we'll find out what's going on and why that wasn't deposited into that account. But by the end of the year, we should be right at that $90-something thousand number. Other than that, if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
You answered my cell phone tower question right off.
Yeah, that's the same question I had.
Do any other board members have any other questions on the financial update?
David, on the contract service, what contract is it you expect to sign between now and the end of the year that'll bring that balance closer to budget?
It's a contract that we're already in, I believe, and I would have to look it up real quick. I don't recall if it's the grass cutting that we're just closing out or the snow removal that we're just had some extra encumbered, but I can look that up real quick before we move on to the next item if you want.
David, it may be Kramer.
Yeah, that's the grass cutting contract.
And that's the, that was just done this last week. So that should be.
So for the next month's report, that should be closed out, that 120.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yep.
Just about there.
David, I'd like to ask a question. Steve Bliss.
Yes, sir.
Is the drainage ditch project complete?
Physically, yes. Financially, no. They just finished that, and I was going to cover that under the new business, which was one of the first items. If you want to wait till then, or I can answer it now.
No, I'll wait.
Sure.
Thank you.
David, when we left off in February, we were talking a lot about snow removal and Mile High not being interested in continuing. Have you had any trouble filling in their contract? It looks like the rates might have gone up based on the budget from last year.
Well, the budget that we started with this year is the same. That hasn't changed. We did just recently execute a new contract in the past couple of weeks, and we just finished up training with them, and they are out actually getting ready and have mobilized equipment and brought it in. So we do have someone under contract, Mountain West, and they've gone through training with me on the airfield, and the rates is an hourly rate, but it appears that even though it's a little bit higher than the hourly rate that we were previously charged, it looks like they're able to finish it in less time. So it looks like it's going to probably average out a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions from any board members on the financial update? And David, I know we'd left off last time in February too, talking about CIP update, and I am curious about that, but I'm going to hold for the CARES Act section some questions there. So I know that will come. So then, unless there's other questions, move on to the airport needs recommendations to council. And I have two items I just wanted to follow up on. In February, we were speaking about the CPI adjustment in the leases that needed to be addressed that
Right.
potentially require lease amendments. Is that something that will require the lease amendments, and therefore will we need to recommend, council approves those amendments?
No, so how we're going to address that, the way the language is written, it allows for, if that particular CPI index is no longer available, then it's the next one that covers this region.
Okay.
And it basically just changed names, not so much the area. So on any new leases going forward, we have the new CPI index named in the new leases. And there's no need to amend previous or current leases just to adjust that, because the law allows for, if that one ever goes away, just go to the next the next regional CPI that is there, which is what we've done.
Easy. Then the other question I have before I turn it to anybody else is the 30-year leases. With the ballot measure now allowing them, do we need to at this point make a recommendation on future lease structure, or is that something that will come out of an RFP for a next hangar development, or how should we be thinking about that when we want to?
Actually, that once it was certified, election results, and went through all the constitutional requirements, which I think they wrapped up at the end of November. And Michelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the latter part of November that they certified the election results. And so once they went through that process, they're immediately eligible going forward. Now, the ones that were already in process through the end of this year, if they want to go back and do a lease amendment on that new lease to go to 30 years, then we would take those before council just as a normal lease amendment. So I mean, I don't know that there's really a recommendation that needs to go to council on that because the ballot measure passed and has been certified. And so they are now eligible for 30 years.
I think it was more, a question on, given that that's a kind of business change and, basically the question, is that right for the airport? Yes or no? And making sure that council is aware of the opinions of the board as a matter of policy or precedent, really, not necessarily the mechanics of, yes, you can at this point. If that would be something that's
right. If the board wishes to write a letter in support of that, then by all means, absolutely. I think that would be in order. I think that it is advantageous for the airport because, it's more in line with the times of what lease term people are looking for when they're constructing new hangars. They would much rather have a 30-year lease than a 20-year lease. So I think it's advantageous for the airport to use the 30-year lease, which is one of the things that we went through the city manager's office and then through him to the council members as to why that it's helpful for the airport. So the council is aware of that. I don't want to speak for them. I guess maybe Joan can answer that better than I can as far as their take on it. But it's something that failed the last time and council opted to put it back on the ballot for this time. So that would seem to indicate that that's something that they're in favor of.
You want me to speak to that now or wait?
Sure. No, go ahead.
Please.
Okay, you're correct, David, that we did okay that and thought it was a good thing, but it's my understanding that each lease is at the discretion of council, whether they want it to be up to 30 years or not. So it's not like a blanket proposal that all leases from this point on will be 30 years. It depends upon each individual, but I think council did support that the 30-year lease for hangars.
Okay.
If I'm understanding what you're talking about correctly.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Bliss, I think you were wanting to chime in there.
Whoops.
Did anyone else have comment on that or a different recommendation to council? Does anyone think we need to, address any support to council at this point or wait for an individual lease before we bring that up?
I would
Sounds
think
to me like, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It sounds to me like they're in favor of it if they brought it back onto the ballot on their own. And David agrees it's good for the airport. I think most lessees are going to be interested in it. So sounds like everybody involved is already interested in it without much input from us.
It seems like maybe if somebody was applying and struggling to get the full 30 years that wanted it, that they might seek support from us at that point to encourage the city to extend them the 30-year lease. I don't know if we would know about that. Somebody would have to reach out to us, but that would seem reasonable to be able to get behind an individual case knowing that it's not a blanket clause.
Yeah, I would typically the leases don't. Each lease that goes to the council doesn't go before the board, just the master lease.
Mm-hmm.
And we can begin reviewing that next year and make any updates or changes that are necessary. We can do that as agenda item next year, as well as schedule a race and charges. But they wouldn't go before the board. So if there's somebody that thinks that it might need some assist, then I would say that person might want to reach out to the board.
So Harrison and David, sorry to interrupt. We have somebody that is on an iPhone. Not sure if it's a board member. So we were going to admit them just to see. So it'll take just a second here.
For our iPhone user, we just made you a co-host. So if you could please share your camera. And I just asked you to unmute if you could identify yourself.
Hi, this is Mick.
Thank you.
Hey, Mick. Glad you could join us.
Hi.
Does anyone else have anything on the airport needs recommendation to council item? Well, then let's move on to new business. There, we can see you, Mick. Nice to see you. Mr. Slater, runway safety area project update. You're muted, David.
Thank you. I thought I clicked on it, but I guess I didn't. Earlier, I was asked about the runway safety area, if it was completed. Physically, yes. We just did final completion. Basically, that project, the Peck Ditch Company had an irrigation ditch that ran partially through the runway safety area on the west end of the runway. We received grant funding from the FAA, and it was, got the numbers right here. There's a grant that will finalize out at $543,216. About $143,000 to $144,000 of that is engineering and design cost. And then the rest of it is the construction cost. We basically tied into the ditch closer to the fence line on the west end and paralleled the fence line around the outside of the vehicle service road or perimeter road, and then came up and tied it back into the original ditch on that end just outside of our fence line. And then we angled the fence over so that the farmer would still have access to the area outside of the ditch, and put a culvert in on the backside as well. So there's two different access points on the ditch. It's actually a much better ditch. And then we did the grading in the runway safety area, which extends out 300 feet past the runway, and graded and sloped it so that it would drain properly within the runway safety area. We are just waiting on an invoice from the contractor, which will be the full amount minus, I believe it's 5% retainage. And then we'll pay the retainage once everything else is, any punch list item is finalized. But they are, for the most part, offsite, and it is complete. Any questions about that project?
Yes, David, is that project, was that in preparation to lengthen the runway, or was that totally separate?
That was actually totally separate. It was a safety area project because the ditch impeded in the runway safety area. Does it help in the event we eventually get funding to extend the runway? Yes, significantly.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board on the runway safety area project? And David, do you want to move on to a CARES Act grant?
Sure. So basically what the CARES Act grant did is provide $69,000. I'm not exactly sure the formula that the FAA uses to determine how much each airport gets, but they made the determination that we were able and eligible to get $69,000. And that goes towards helping us out with the operations and maintenance cost of the airport, due to the fact that we lost business, especially during the stay at home and safer at home orders that were originally put out there. And the operations counts kind of during that time frame, first part of the year, particularly the March through May, June time frame. There were significant reductions, and there were some days that no aircraft flew. Of course, that also hurt our fuel flowage and fuel refund. The the number of operations, how much we got off of the ramp fee, which is a minimal amount anyway, but it did take its toll on that as well. And then, you know, some of the maintenance and things that we did at the airport was eligible for that as well. So we were able to, I guess for a lack of a better word, capitalize on using that grant up. And I have the reimbursement request into the FAA, and we should be getting paid before the end of the month, I hope. So we were able to get refunded the $69,000 that the CARES grant allowed us to accept. That's my update on that.
Any questions from the board? David, my question is on CARES Act as related to matching dollars. That they, you know, were able to provide more federal funding for AIP projects than in the past and not require the matching. Can you just talk really quickly about that impact?
Sure, yeah, and I probably should have brought that up with the runway safety area project as well. So typically the FAA funding is 90%, and then 5% is picked up by the state aviation at CDOT, and then 5% by the airport fund. With the runway safety area project, they did use some of the CARES Act dollars to pick up that extra 10%, both from the state and from us locally. So they paid 100% on the safety area project as well. So we did not have to match that grant, which is really good. It also helped the state aviation out because they are taking a hit because all airports are having issues with fuel flowage, which means that there's less going into the state fund, state aviation trust fund as well. So that did help with the safety area project as well.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful context. I think when, at least for me, when we get into next year, you know, January, potentially to relook at the CIP and, you know, see that impact, because that certainly, that savings is nice as we look at some of those future projects and, you know, whether 2021 or future years that we have an extra to play with now.
Yeah, I might as well ask, since we're talking about it, David, in your mind, it looks like we're currently 145,000 into the enterprise fund as of November 30th. Are we on track for the CIP for the next couple of years, in your opinion?
Yes, and I would like to put the CIP discussion on our next agenda so that we can go over that. We had to wrap that up and have it entered by, I guess it was about a month ago was the deadline that we put that in. So they're not looking at CARES Act funding going forward on that, that they told us about anyway. But I believe we are on track for how we're looking to stay positive, meaning revenue versus expended. We should still be in the black and on track for what we anticipate on that. And of course, I can also bring up what we look like on our fund balance at the end of the year on our next meeting as well. So I'll make sure the CIP and the airport fund balance is on the next agenda.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
Sure.
David, one piece of that, if I can just request, when you look at that, can you also include the either anticipated or what you're going to request for AIP funding?
Sure. Yeah, and I can run over that briefly if you like.
I'm okay waiting for January and seeing it in the broader context.
Okay.
I asked specifically, so one thing I'm tracking for work outside of this is just aviation trust fund health right now.
Okay.
And, you know, if there is no relief on that, a potential recommendation to council to recommend to our federal elected officials, take action on that, because there's certainly risk in that funding source going forward right now.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions on CARES Act funding? And last and not least, Southside Utility Project.
Okay, so we felt like there was a really super tight budget, and so we were able to get the city engineering department to partner with us to handle the design for the utility, the water and sewer utilities that we're going to be doing on the south side. And so I got that information to them end of 2019, very beginning of 2020 at the latest. I don't remember if it was December or January, but they worked on it, and then the engineer that was working on it retired mid-year. And the way it was laid out was more for an on-call contractor to perform, and there were some hesitations in the engineering department to do it that way after all. And so the new engineer that they brought on, he didn't have to completely start from scratch, but he definitely had to make some adjustments to it. And so we're hoping to advertise at the beginning of next year and be ready to begin construction and have it done by spring of next year. Hopefully the March timeframe. And we had received a state grant from CDOT for $400,000, and we were matching that with airport fund money in the amount of $323,222. So about $724,000, $723,000 and change for the total project. So it looks like we will have that in place by spring of 2021. So there were some delays, unanticipated delays, that a little disappointing for me, but hopefully by the time we have development ready to get going over there, we'll have that in.
David, where's that going to be located? Is that going to be inside the airport proper or on the other side of the road on the south side?
No, it's going to be just inside the airport fence. It'll start down by Rogers Road where there's a manhole about 15 feet outside the fence on the east end. And then it'll run west along inside the airport property and go just around the outside of the existing hangars on the south side and run just past them. And then cross underneath the access road coming in from the cul-de-sac. And then there will be one main pipe that makes a right-hand turn and goes along that access road headed north. And then it will also continue down to the west even more, and then come in almost behind the Quonset hut, behind where Mile High is located, so that both sides of that new taxi lane will be serviced. And then the water loop will start on the far southwest corner of that southwest hangar over there. There's a hydrant and a hydrant valve there. It will loop out and follow the sewer line back up behind the Quonset hut, and then turn and go back towards the hangars, towards the east, towards those hangars, and tie into a water main over there. So we will have 2 hydrants installed for new development as well for fire protection, along with that water loop to allow for them to tie into the water as well as the sewer.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? All right, then. Next item, final public invited to be heard. Michelle, Heather, has anyone joined in yet?
We have not had anybody join us.
All right. So we'll move on then to board, council, and staff comments. Does anyone on the board have any comments they'd like to make?
Anything? Can we make a comment about anything?
I mean, preferably related to the airport and, our advisory.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know if this is up. I got a call from one of the pilots, and that south side road, it comes to a dead end, and then the fence has a gate. The gate opens when the skydiving operation is going, and so those cars can go in and out. But during that construction on this drainage, there were some trucks. They didn't want to open that gate to leave the airport, so they broke through that fence that aligns that taxiway, and they came across some hangars, and they deposited from their tires dirt, rock, and all that stuff. And one of the guys told me he couldn't get his airplane out, and he was afraid to start his airplane. So I'm wondering if David could mention to those guys not to do that. Go out of the airport at that gate and get out of your truck and open up the gate if you're going to leave the airport, and don't open up a fence that, it's like a barbed wire fence, and then drive through the taxiways.
So just a little clarification on that. I got an email from that tenant, and that evening I went and talked with the contractor. I talked to actually 2 contractors to make sure that I had the correct one, and got in touch with the contractor that was working on the ditch for the RSA. And there is a gap between that barbed wire fence and the main gate that they did cut through, and they weren't just cutting through because they couldn't get out the gate, because they had their own lock on there. They had gone over to pick up a hydrant meter and some barricades right there on the edge. And I did address that with them and let them know that's not the thing to do. And then they came and sprayed it off and rinsed it down and then swept it. And I went in behind them with the FOD boss and picked up any remaining little gravel pieces and everything on the same day that I received notification that it was an issue. We took care of it that same day. So that's the back end of that story.
Okay. Well, that's the only comment I had. Thank you, David.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anybody else on the board?
This might be kind of a long range thing, but I became an airplane owner this year, and I've been flying out of Longmont more than usual back when I rented. And so I've been thinking about Longmont compared to Fort Collins or Northern Colorado Regional, if you insist. The operations numbers on AirNav are not that different, and Fort Collins obviously has a remote tower. I'm wondering, you guys that fly out of Longmont, in the next 5 or 10 years, can you see a remote tower being a thing at Longmont? And is that something we should think about in the future?
Now, just as somebody who flies out of there, all the guys that I talk to say they don't want a tower.
That's the same thing that I've heard.
Why is that?
Freedom. And it's pretty safe. And guys are really good. When we get up there, we talk to each other and take a look. And I don't think a tower right now is needed. Maybe if they lengthen the runway and we get a lot more jet activity, it might be needed. But right now, I'm not sure that the guys would go for it, and girls.
Yeah, I'd agree with Steve. And I think if we had, more commercial traffic and, maybe some bigger airplanes coming in, which that is the case up in Northern Colorado, at the regional up there, that it might be appropriate. But I think for our operations, I think things are going well, and I don't know, don't think that a tower would necessarily enhance things for operations. Just probably not necessary for the kind of operations that we have.
Just one more thought, statistically speaking on that. A lot of the people from Rocky Mountain Metro, Fort Collins, occasionally Centennial, but not that often. And then sometimes Boulder, but specifically Rocky Mountain in northern Colorado. They have people that leave that environment to come to a non-towered airport for flight training and touch and goes and things like that to get out of the controlled environment. I suspect if you put them back in that same environment, you would lose a percentage of those flight operations based on that. I don't think you'd lose all of them, but I would say that there is a decent percentage of our total operations that are from other airports as well. So in doing so, you might knock that total operations number back down below that criteria that the FAA looks at for a towered airport. And I think that's one of the other considerations.
Yeah, I appreciate all those points. And I think you're right, Mick, that the commercial service is the main reason Fort Collins is kind of angling for that to get Allegiant back in there. But I was just surprised that the total numbers were so close.
I do think, Russell, it'd be a really interesting one for us to keep in the back of our head as runway extension conversations come up. You know, as the traffic mix changes, how we should be thinking about that, because that's certainly a change to the operations, and something that we absolutely should make sure we're all well aware of implications one way or the other. Any other comments?
I had a question. First of all, congratulations, Russ, on the airplane. And then the ATC up there is so friendly. I love flying up there because they're happy, and you actually are almost having a dialogue with them. They're seeking information from us. It's a fun environment to fly into right now. Won't stay that way forever. I'm sure it'll get more business-like. The question I had was for the seats that were coming up and expiring this month, have they been renewed, or do we have the same board going into 2021, or is that finalized? I know the interviews may just be like this weekend. Can you tell us,
kind of
David?
beat me to the punch, Melinda.
There we go.
I was actually going to tell Mick, who has opted not to reapply. Thank you very much for your service, and I'm sure it's bittersweet, but we do appreciate everything you've done and being a part of the airport board, and wish you all the best and going forward.
When's your term up?
Say again?
This is my last meeting. So,
really? Wow.
Yeah. So I've been on the board for 3.5 years. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. It's been great working with all of you. My wife and I have plans to be traveling more to visit family more in 2021, and just not sure where I'm going to be at any particular time as far as trying to line up a schedule with board meetings or whatever. So, but it's been really nice working with all of you, and hopefully, now that you're having meetings again, 2021 can be a better year, a more productive year for the board, and you guys can really get on a roll. And I'm sure that I'm going to be keeping tabs on you too. So I'll certainly be seeing you around.
Congratulations.
And I'll let Michelle Gomez speak to filling that seat.
So we did board interviews on the 15th this last Saturday. The 5th this last Saturday. And the board appointments will be on the 15th. So we will know new board members on the 16th.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then they'll start January 1st.
Okay.
So is there just one opening? Is that all?
2. There's 2 openings.
Oh, 2.
Russell's position was also up, but he's reapplied.
Oh, okay.
And not guaranteed that he will be coming back. That's up to council.
This might be my last meeting too. They might kick me out.
Fingers crossed, Russ.
Not a chance. I'll
He
talk to
interviewed
the
well.
mayor. He's my neighbor.
Well, Mick, thank you for the last several years. I know, when I first joined the board, you helped show me the ropes and help me get familiar with stuff. So I really appreciate it, and we'll miss seeing you in these meetings, but I am sure you'll come still join us, and public invited to be heard is always open. So we look forward to still hearing from you.
Thank you, Harrison.
And Russell, I hope we're seeing you in January as well.
Oh, thank you.
Any other comments from anybody on the board? I'll make one quick note just for everyone's knowledge. I actually changed jobs in April, and I'm now working for a consulting firm that does airport engineering, planning. I'm working on the air service development side. That's commercial aviation service. So my particular role certainly won't overlap with anything at the Longmont Airport, though my firm potentially could in the future. I am one of 2 employees in Colorado. We've done almost no business in Colorado related to planning or engineering. But if that, as those topics come up, I will certainly recuse myself and, make that conflict known, but just want everyone to be aware of that. Going forward, I have discussed it with David before as well, but just make
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Way to go. Can I ask one question of David, if he's still around?
I'm here.
Well, I have a lot of the paperwork that I got when I started. I read somewhere there in the paperwork that there's 22,000 people who come to Longmont through the airport. I was just wondering, how do you get that 22,000 people on average?
A study was done by CDOT in their economic impact study. And those numbers came from their economic impact study. I think when we put that out, it was from the 2013 study. We haven't updated that from the study they did in 2018 and released in 2020.
So what do? They stand out there and count them all year round?
No, I think they talk with the people that fly into here. The names of companies that we've provided that we've seen come through here, and they reached out to different people. And I'm not sure how they made that analysis, but we took our numbers from their numbers.
Okay.
I've flown into other airports during the last survey, and they had a little brochure that you picked up, and then where you went online to complete what you did, where you came from, how long your flight was, how much did you buy fuel, did you use services, how many souls, all those questions. And I completed probably 3 or 4 of those in that survey year, which I think was 2018.
That's very interesting. I've been to over 100 airports, just like Vance Brand. Never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was in, I want to say probably Sterling, maybe the Sterling airport, and in the FBO. So yeah, I got to go inside the FBO, and they had the CDOT stuff on the counter, probably right next to the crew car keys. So that's why.
Really, the number may be a lot bigger, because those numbers come only from people who filled out the survey.
Right.
A lot of people aren't going to do it.
Yeah,
correct.
You fly in with 4 people, and the pilot writes down he came and he parked, stayed overnight, but he didn't mention the 4 people he brought in. So those numbers may be really way off, I think.
Yeah, and they did ask for that number, and then their focus was out of the state. That was really what they were interested in, was how many people were coming from outside the state coming in. Yeah. So while my information was interesting, they were more interested in out-of-state visits.
Okay, I was just interested. That's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Peck, do you have any comments?
Actually, I have about 3 things, if the board can grant me the time to ask. Okay. First of all, I want your advice. The Rocky Mountain, and I don't know what the second M stands for, but the airport noise group asked me to be part of their group and attend their meetings. Would that help? Would that help this airport to have that knowledge, to know what's going on? I don't want to do anything, and I don't want to take this to ask my fellow counselors if this advisory group thinks that it would not be a good idea for me to join those meetings. I don't have any feelings toward it one way or the other, but if you think it would help to garner knowledge as to what's going on, basically on the ground level, what's being said, where they're going, then I would join and bring that information back to you. But if you think it would just be a waste of time, I certainly don't want to waste my time.
Are you going to be a spy? Is that what you're going to be?
Double agent. Yeah. So think about it. You don't have to let me know, but if you have any thoughts, I would appreciate it.
I'm all for an ambassador. I think that's a good idea, but I think they're beating a horse that's been settled. I mean, it's been back and forth to court so many times. I don't think there's anything new going to come out of it. And we've heard they do come to the meetings and tell us, you know, what their objective is. Okay. And I think we hear from them that way, but they kind of keep bringing up the noise, but it's been measured. We're not out of line. There's really nothing else to be done other than just courtesy of pilots, which we do. So I'd say it might end up being misuse of time, but of course I'm always interested in hearing what's going on as well. So I'd say I'd vote 70-30 that you you skip at 70, but if you've got enough support, attend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for that input. It's really what I wanted. So I'll take that as my answer. The other thing is that for David, I noticed in the financial report, and this is just for my knowledge, that the EE insurance was at a deficit. Can you tell me what the EE insurance is?
I think that's the Equal Opportunity Employment Insurance. I would have to be 100% sure, I would have to ask somebody in accounting.
Okay, I would like to know this because it was $1,000 or less in the deficit. And I don't know what that means.
So, yeah, and that's one of those things that they set up as to what it's going to cost. But I think what they haven't had a handle on is whatever time Michelle spends on the board, I'm paying for her time, but I also have to pay for a portion or a percentage of the benefits for the time that she's putting in.
Oh, okay.
And I think that instead of it just being for me, a portion of that, the reason it's going over is a very small portion of that is going for what it would cost having Michelle spend time on the board and the minutes and the things that she does for us.
Okay, that's a perfect answer. I don't need to know anything else about it. I was just curious. And the last thing is, do you have any new information on the Part 16 through FAA that is pending or?
So they gave them themselves an extension again. And I suspect they'll do it another time since they're, I think, past their deadline once again. Right. Of their extension. They'll probably give themselves another extension. Sometimes that's a sign that they're about to render a decision, but other times it just means that they're too busy to even write the extension.
I'm going to say
that's information that I got from our outside aviation council.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Slater, did you have any other comments?
I believe I made mine, so I don't think I have any more.
All right. We've made it through the agenda. So without any further comments, it's been really nice to see everybody and hope everyone has a lovely rest of the year, nice holiday season, and a happy new year. See you all in January. I'll adjourn the meeting for December. Thank you.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see everybody.
Okay.
Bye.